Welcome everyone to the Home Inspector's Guide to 203K Consulting. Today we're going to talk about the fundamentals of mandatory, recommended, and desired items. Now believe it or not, that question comes up often and not necessarily from new consultants. So let's start out with the delineation of mandatory, starting with the definition. It's defined as compulsory, or as something defined by rules or regulations, which is exactly how we use it. Now this sounds pretty easy, doesn't it? Well, as home inspectors, you have a pretty good idea of current building codes along with identifying hazards and most always provide commentary on any nebulous conditions you might observe. So let's take this in a different direction, starting with mandatory from the perspective of the guidelines. The guideline definition of mandatory is a reference describing three separate qualifiers for existing structures: repair items for health and safety of the occupants, repair on the structure to protect the collateral interest of the property, and functionality to enhance the value of the property. Unlike home inspecting, we can't supplant the requirements of current building codes over the subject property. Otherwise, we'd be rebuilding most all the systems and many of the components on every house we inspect. And that was never the intention of the 203K renovation program. So for the purpose of this lesson, we're going to be looking at a house probably built 1910, an old farmhouse. Nobody was actually living there. And you'll excuse the pictures aren't the best, but it does give you some idea of what we are talking about. So what the department did was create a separate list of requirements called minimum property requirements, which were created specifically for existing homes with the intention of providing a basic measure of safety and functionality. For example, each bedroom shall have a minimum of one outlet, or that it's possible for a set of stairs to have 9-inch rises, or the continued use of knob and tube wiring. Unfortunately, the problem here is that when they created 4000.1, the department eliminated most of the specifics regarding these requirements, except the reference. So now we find ourselves governed by a vague description of health and safety almost 30 years old, which has become an acronym for minimum property requirements. Unfortunately, the only way to get a clear understanding of this is to read the original guidelines, which would be a daunting task, to say the least. I might categorize it as 203K history lesson if you're looking for a master's degree. The only positive here is that no one else knows what they are either, but oftentimes it makes your choices even more difficult and more risky. So now we find ourselves in a middle ground, straddling rules we can't define, along with misinformation coming from every direction. This dilemma is exacerbated by additional requirements placed on the consultant in 4000.1, specifically regarding building codes and enforcement. This was a 3-minute segment of an 18-minute tutorial video intended to provide clarity to one of the most commonly misused descriptions of work items in the 203K renovation program. Whether you're a home inspector, HUD consultant, appraiser, or underwriter, it's essential that you follow HUD guidelines. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.